Welcome to Utmost Outdoors, my YouTube channel, which is devoted to primarily videos about gold mining, jet boating, and generally fabricating things for use in the great outdoors. I had some questions about my Miller table setup, so here is everything I know about Miller tables. This video is going to be broken into three main components: how to build one, how to set it up, and how to actually use it. So right off the bat, the construction. Any flat surface will work. I used a sheet of, let me show you here. I used a sheet of cabinet grade birch plywood. So this has lots of plies, so it's very dimensionally stable. It's not going to warp or twist because you really want a flat surface. Then I built a little lip around the edge here, and this was just some scrap aluminum C-channel. You can use pretty much anything that is straight. Just silicone it to your flat surface after putting some paint or varathane onto this surface. I am using a cutting mat, so it's just like a little plastic mat you can get at an art supply store. It's got a very, very gentle texture to it. But if you want to skip that, you can just use blackboard paint directly onto your flat surface, whatever that may be. Right up here, to distribute the water, I have a piece of copper tubing, and in this tube there are 35 holes. They're 3 32nds of an inch each, and those evenly distribute the water over the sluice. I basically just take a couple clamps like this and clamp that on top of the mat. That holds this in place. And to further distribute the water, because you want this water as even as possible, I've just got a bit of this noodle matting, sort of like miner's moss, with a piece of aluminum square tube on top and a weight to hold it down. And that just makes sure that all the water kind of flows out of here evenly over the surface, so there's no fast spots and slow spots. The next step is to use clean water and an empty tub. I use this tub for my cleanup sluice, and so it gets all mucky. And so I recommend you throw away that water and start with fresh water when using the Miller table. The reason you want to do this is all of this muck will actually get recirculated out of your pump and up and over the Miller table. And you're running such fine amount of water over this that all that little muck starts to contaminate your nice clean gold, which is the goal. The pump here is a 600 gallons per hour, or 2,400 liters per hour is what it says on the pump. And it's running through about a 5/8 inch vinyl tube to bring the water up to the sluice box. I also have a little tray here. So this is just the bottom of, I believe it's a windshield washer jug. And I just have it sitting there so that any material that comes off here has to go like up and over before getting recirculated around. And that becomes important later when you're doing your very final cleanup. You don't want any little specks coming in to interrupt your gold. You want the slope to be adjustable. So what I have here is, first of all, this is fairly flat, and then I've actually got a shim here to make sure it's perfectly level. So it's supported on this corner, on that corner, and then in the middle back here. So it's sort of a tripod. And back here, I've got all these shims set up to give it a 1 inch for 2 feet of slope. So the whole thing is 24 inches long, and this is 1 inch of slope, so 1/2 inch per foot. And I can adjust it finally with this shim here, and so you can see when we get it set up how that's important. What I want is I want to be able to remove this 1 inch slope to flatten it and actually make it go slightly uphill, so that at the very end, when I'm snuffering everything up, you can get the little thin layer of water to actually build into a bit of a pool, and then you can use that to help snuffer. Whereas when it's at a slope like this, there's such a small amount of water, you just can't snuffer everything up. So about a 1 inch slope for the entire 24 inches, and then make sure you can remove that at the end to get a bit of a pool of water. It's really important that you do use some jet dry in your water. You'll notice if you don't have jet dry, the water kind of beads up all over everything. This will make it run nice and smooth. Super important. So we're just about ready to actually run this thing. Before we get going, you want to make sure that you have your snuffer ready, the actual material. This is the concentrates from my cleanup sluice, a fine fan brush, which I use to sweep everything out, my bigger brush to sweep everything into a pile at the end, and of course a spoon to get everything in there. Optionally, you can use a magnet to help move some stuff around. I'll show you how that works, but this is purely optional. So let's get the level off of this thing and fire it up. Just gonna plug her in. You can see it's still beating over the dry areas, but thanks to that jet dry, it's going to completely cover everything. And you should have a nice smooth fan of material or of water going over the bottom, just like that. Set my camera there. Basically, just any spoon, I'll get the spoon nice and full of my material. Your material should be damp. You don't want to put dry material on, even with the jet dry. And I just set the spoon on the surface upright like this, and just sort of shake it around a little bit. That's going to distribute that material all over the place. And you can already see that the blonde sands are just rolling right away. The black sands are really, really slowly peeling away, and all the little specks of gold are staying put. Now, I don't have a lot of concentrates here, so this should go fairly quickly, but you should expect about 10 to 20 minutes, depending on how much you have to deal with, to do a run. Once you get it set up, it's pretty straightforward to, whoops, you don't want to break that surface. Now, we're already seeing some pretty good gold here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my snuffer bottle, and I'll show you right here. I've got all this material on the bottom, so I'm just going to sort of rinse everything like that and pour all the water out where it's not going to wash anything down. And I'm just really gently going to snuffer some water into there to get the last of everything out and onto the table. That's where this nice fan brush comes in. So I'm just going to do my best to sort of show you what's going on here. You've got this nice thin layer of material here. It's set up at the perfect slope right now. You can already see all this gold, but it's sort of starting to sit still. So if we focus in here, we can see that some of the black sand is just rolling off nice and slowly. If I take this brush, if I put it like this, you can risk having a dry spot behind it, which will lift up some of that gold and you'll lose it. So you want to put the brush sideways like this and just really gently, no more than the weight of the brush, just go across everything, and you'll see how that's really helping just move everything nice and down your miller table, leaving just the gold behind. The way the miller table works is all of that black sand is very brittle material. So for it to get really fine, it's in these little round balls. Whereas the gold, to get that fine, is actually smashed into flat pieces. So the gold is flat, sitting on the bottom, and it sort of sticks to that boundary layer. Whereas the black sand, being round, is able to roll off the surface. So we can just sit here and just do this, and eventually it will clear the surface. You may find some spots that are slightly uneven, and you just come down here and do the same thing. Brush those side to side and let them work their way down. At this point, if you want, you can use a magnet. And you don't want to actually try to suck the black sand up to the magnet, because it can pull some gold with it. But what you do is you just hover it near the surface. And if we watch what happens to all that black sand, as I do this, it just picks it all up and gets it moving. And that's all we want to see happen. And you can see how much more alive that is. It's really starting to move again. So you just kind of go over the surface with your magnet. Gets everything into that flow and moving. And then back with your little fan brush. And you're just looking to get rid of all of that black sand. So we're almost ready to actually change the angle of the table here and snuffer everything up. So I'm just going to let this run for a minute and we'll get right back to you. Okay, so we're just about at the point where we're ready to snuffer up all of this gold. There's just the last little bit of black sand, so we're just gonna fan the brush over the surface and we're almost looking like pure gold in this case. So let's take this opportunity while we just let this final cleanup happen to talk about what are acceptable losses. So there's always going to be a few little specks that work their way to the bottom of your miller table and into your tub. They're not lost, they're just in your tub. So that's why it's important that we have a clean tub to begin with. And with that clean tub, everything that runs over this miller table, remember we started with just a really small amount of material. So any losses that we do have are going to wind up in this tub and I will collect them to use at a later date. I basically take all those and I'll put them back through the cleanup sluice when I'm doing a future run. So there's no actual losses, there's just a few little specks that may make it off the sluice. Now at this point, we have enough water flow that any muck that might be recirculating around this system is actually just going to go right over the surface and back into the tub. But as soon as we change the angle, anything that gets sucked up here water-wise, it's just going to sit here. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by lowering the flow down to just a trickle. We want to keep the water flowing, but we don't want it going through at full speed. And then we're going to drop the angle of the table so we can get a pool of water here that we can actually suck up with our snuffer bottle. I've just got a little inline valve here. I'm going to twist. Goes down the water just a little bit. And then I'm going to pull out my shims here. There we go. Now, water's still flowing over this end, but it's got a bit of a pool happening over here. So in this situation, we don't have to worry about material going off the box. We can take our big brush here. You can use a smaller brush, but this just really helps speed things up. And just sweep everything to the middle. So it'll take a few sweeps, but you'll see like a nice line of gold forming. If you don't have this much gold to work with, you may actually not really even see a lot of gold on the table until you start sweeping, and then you'll get that line forming. So it's kind of satisfying to be at this stage. So you just work from the edge. You'll notice that when you get to a spot that has a lot of gold, some gold sticks to the brush, and then when you set the brush down, it brings some gold back out. So I always sweep in stages, bring everything into the middle, and then clean off the brush, come back to the outside, and sweep everything back in again. How perfect you want to be with this is up to you. If there is a rogue piece of gold sitting anywhere on the table, you can always snuffer it up later. But you want to get the majority of everything right into a nice, clean pile of essentially pure gold at this stage. All right. Now that looks like about a gram to me. This size of table, I find that at about ½ an ounce, that's enough gold on the table that you kind of have to do it in several iterations, I guess. So if you're dealing with an ounce of gold at a time, once you put enough gold on the table, it's maybe time to sweep it up, snuffer it up, and then start with the rest of it. But it's a good problem to have if you have more than ½ an ounce of gold on this table. The other thing is everything I put on this miller table, you have to have it screened to a 20 mesh. Let me just show you what a 20 mesh screen is. So this, with my hand for scale, is a 20 mesh screen. And everything that I was just running was through a 30 mesh screen. So quite fine. 20 mesh works perfectly, 30 mesh works as well, and then I just pan anything between 30 and 20. It's fairly easy to pan that out. So a pasta strainer might be a little coarse, but a fine like flour sieve works perfectly if you don't have access to like a 30 mesh screen. At this point, we're just going to squeeze our snuffer and suck up that gold. Nice. Everything's up. Any little rogue pieces that I can see, like this piece over here, some over there, and we sort of go around the table and vacuum any remaining pieces up. You can do a final sweep with the paintbrush if you want. And there you go. Everything is neatly in the tip of our snuffer bottle. So let's take this snuffer bottle and we're gonna head into the garage and put this into a little weighing tray so that we can see exactly how much this weighs. So we've got these little weighing trays here. You can do this in the safety of a gold pan if you like, but I'm fairly confident I can just do it right here. So I'm going to tip it up slightly. Just going to tip it up slightly on a Sharpie like that. And this actual bottle, there's some gold around the tip here. So I'm just gonna give it a little shake and shake everything down to the bottom as best as I can. Sort of push that down in there. Make sure that all the gold is out of the top. Then I can pull the tube out, put my finger over the end, invert it, and you just sort of give it a bit of a swirl and get everything down into the tip. So I've got a little bit of gold contained down there. I'm just going to remove my finger a little bit and let that gold fall into the tray. So now everything should be out, but give it a secondary swirl. Make sure you got everything there. And we're just going to check that this does in fact look empty, which it does. Now at that point, you can just pull the top off and do that with your thumb as well. But I'm going to put this tube back through here. And we are ready for the next batch. It's very important that you label these things. So I am doing I'm just gonna set this gold pan here, pour out any water, like so, and set it there. I'm doing a clean out from a 4-day trip, and I've got a few different things that I'm doing here. So what we just did was everything that came out of the hopper of my sluice box during that run. From day 1 to day 4, I didn't clean out the hopper every single day. I just used the hopper as a bit of a buffer to take the gold and then lose the gold into the actual capture mats down below. And it sort of acts as a surge protector. So that's what we just did. I'm guessing this is going to be about 1 gram, but we're going to let it sit here and dry. And I just made sure tray number two, that's the total from the hopper. Everything's labeled so I don't accidentally mix everything up, because otherwise I just put everything into one cleanup and only do everything once. I'm doing them all separately because I want to kind of know what's going on and what percentages are where. So we'll get back to you as soon as this dries out. I always test this the day of to make sure the scale is still reading the same, but this is 40.68 grams empty. So when I put this on the scale, I can do the math and I'll know exactly how much gold we just took off the miller table. So our gold is now dry. And just as a little heads up to anyone, I just let this air dry, but it is tempting to try to speed that up. And so if you do want to do that, you can just take like a regular Bic lighter and hold it underneath, just move it around a little bit. It warms the surface and you'll see that water sort of bubble away. Word of caution, if you hold the lighter directly underneath a little pile of gold that's wet like this, that water, as it starts to boil, will actually pop and fizzle a little and you'll get bits of gold thrown out of your tray. And so you want to be really careful you don't lose gold that way. So just have some patience and everything will be fine. So what's the weight let's have a little look here. It's really hard to tell. With fine gold, it always looks like a lot more than it actually is. But let's see, if I make this into about a centimeter by a centimeter pile, that's sort of what I use as a reference to being that it's probably just over a gram if I can actually pile it up in a little pyramid like that. My guess, 1.2 grams. In the comments below, take a guess. Leaving comments on these videos helps the algorithm know that people are engaged and enjoying the content, and maybe it'll show this video to more people, help my channel grow. If you have enjoyed the video so far, you found it useful or helpful, share it with a friend. I would certainly appreciate it. So I'm going to turn on my scale and let's actually get a weight here. So empty, this tray is 40.68 grams. We're at 42 grams. Now, just because it's much more exciting, let's take a empty tray like this. We're going to tear that out and let's see what we get as we pour this in. A little heavier tapper. All right, there we go. 0. 0.5, 0.75. Oh, we're over a gram. 1.2, 1.27. Wow. There's some very, very fine powder in here. You can still see that's stuck. If I really want to be crazy, I can just sort of brush it all. Look, there's just that little bit more with the brush there. So 1.32 grams of gold, 1.31 grams of gold. Not too bad. That was just from the hopper. And yeah, you can check out the full cleanup from, not really sure what I'll title that video yet, but day 4 of this trip was pretty exciting. I think I did really well. So if you want to see that, stay tuned to the channel and wait for that one to pop up, unless it's already up and I'm posting this after, at which point I don't really know what I'm doing. But hope you enjoyed the video, and hope you learned something. Until next time, cheers, and thank you for watching.